So the planning experiment question, a student is investigating the force needed to just slide a block of a mass on the surface. Like how much force is needed to just slide this wooden block. Plan an experiment that enable him to investigate how the force needed vary with the mass. Like how the force required vary with the mass of this block. The apparatus which is available, we have a light flat wooden block is there with a hook which is fitted on it. And we have a pulley is there which is clamped to the bench. Means like a pulley is there in front of that, we can attach a string and then we can add a load here. That load which we add, that will be equals to the force. Like how much weight is added, that weight will be equals to the applied force. In your plan, list an additional apparatus which we need. What else we need for this? Additional apparatus. Set of loads, or we need a set of load, that is one thing, or a spring balance also, because what we can do, this can also be done directly. Like we can also attach a spring balance here or a force meter and we pull. So how much force, like example, we apply the force and how much force is pulling this, that can also be. So we can mention here, you can mention set of loads, or you can also mention the spring balance or the force meter. Draw a clear label diagram how the apparatus would be arranged. So how we'll arrange this apparatus, you have to draw a diagram. You can use the same diagram or you can draw it separately because they asked to draw a diagram. So how this experiment should be done, like example, if this is representing the bench, so this is representing a bench, a mass is there, means the wooden block is there with the hook. So this is a wooden block with a hook, and there is a pulley placed, as I mentioned, it is there at the edge. So a pulley will be here at this point, and the string attached with the pulley and then to the hook, and the other end is attached. We add a load, because what load we add, that will be the force which is applied here. Like if we add 1 Newton, the force will be 1 Newton. If we add 2 Newton, force will be 2 Newton. And we are investigating how the mass affects the, if you see the beginning of the question, that what is the investigation? The investigation is student investigating force which we need to slide a block across the surface. So plan an experiment which enable him to investigate how the force needed vary with the mass of a block. So how we will change the mass of this block? So what we can do, like example, like this wooden block is there, we can just put a set of load on this. We will know the wood mass of a wooden block and we just add a known mass, so we can change the mass of this wooden block as well. Because a flat wooden block with a hook available, but not, we don't have variety of wooden blocks are there, like different. So we have this only, so how, we just add different set of loads, that will be the mass. Give a brief instruction to carry out the experiment. So how to do this experiment? First thing we'll mention, because after the drawing, first we'll mention, we'll attach the or connect the hook, the pulley with a set of loads, or we can measure. So we'll measure the mass of wooden block, and we will attach the string with hook, and we will add load on the other side. until the block moves. Then we will repeat the procedure with different masses of on the wooden block. And don't mention only repeat, like repeat experiment with 5 different masses or 3 different masses of the wooden block. And then whenever you mention the procedure, you should always mention the sources of error or the precaution. What is the precaution we should take? What could be the precaution? Look perpendicular. Usually, like as we mentioned, we are using a if you are using a force meter, you can also do one thing. You can attach a force meter directly and then pull. That will also work. So when you are using a force meter, you should mention look perpendicular. That is one thing. Another thing, because you are adding, like example, it passes over the string and then it is a load is attached. So you should avoid place the load gently on the other end. So gently place the load, because if we drop the load on the other side, the force which experience will be different what is actually the weight. Yeah, use a smaller load. That's also a good point, because when you use a smaller load, like you use zero point 0.1 Newton, 0.2 Newton instead of directly 1 to 2, so you will have a greater accuracy of the experiment. Use smaller sets, like smaller values for the loads. Then what are the precaution? Results are reliable. So as I mentioned, place the load gently and look perpendicular. When you're reading the scale, you should look perpendicular when you're using the spring balance. So avoid a parallax error and then repeat. Suggest a graph that you could draw. What graph we can plot here? Which quantity, like two quantities are there. One is a load, which we attach, the force. Another one is a mass, which is a dependent and which is independent. Which one is a independent quantity? The mass. Because the mass which we add will affect how much force is needed. So mass is an independent quantity. So we'll plot a graph between mass on x-axis. SI unit of the mass is kilogram, but for this we'll use a gram. Why? Because in the lab, the masses are in gram rather than in kilogram. And the force will be there in newtons. So just mention plot a graph between the mass on x-axis and force on y-axis. You can mention that statement. And if you see the marking scheme points, like the distribution of the marks, so the apparatus which we need, you can mention a force, the additional apparatus, as we mentioned, set of loads or force meter can also be there. Then the diagram, as we drew, then measure the force required for a block to slide, and then repeat with new masses that we did, and same surface, repeat experiment, take average, same angle of the pulling force. Like these are the variables which we should keep constant. And we will plot a graph between mass and force which is needed to slide. Additional, like at least 5 sets. If you find, this is a very important point, just don't mention repeat experiment, always mention repeat with 5 sets or 3 sets of results. Is it clear, this experiment? So plan
Yes,
this.
sir, clear.
Okay, plan this experiment and you will send your answers after the session. You can send.